All right, again, so the goal is to finish this by around 10 o'clock or so, 10:15 at the latest. Take one more break, then do the test review, and then the rest of the period today will be, bless you, lab time for you. I am going to create some examples for you for tomorrow, all right? But some of them won't look that different from things we've already done. Okay, so they start talking about character classes on the bottom of page 567. As it says, you use a character class in a regular expression to treat multiple characters for the same item. What does that mean? Well, if you've got patterns, so notice in here, this may or may not make sense, but this is the pattern they show on the top of page 568. Well, what is that? In England, a lot of times where we use a Z, they use an S or vice versa. You know, did you ever see like Smith versus Smythe type of thing? All right, where people spell things differently. You can put in things like that if you want to. All right. And the reason that you might do that is if you've got a word that's really hard to spell, all right, a lot of companies will do that. I think once I put in, and they may have changed it since then, I put in goggle.com instead of Google, and it still got me there. All right. Sometimes what companies will do is they'll buy similar names even, and they'll just push you off to that page. All right. Again, as it says, the hyphen is used to specify a range of values. So notice what they have here. This should make sense to you by now. This right here. This says that the grade can be A, B, C, D, or F. Notice that E is out of there. All right. I'll tell you a very fast story. I'll always remember this. My grandfather, who's been gone for many years, they didn't have conferences when he was a kid. He only went to school through 8th grade, but he died a millionaire. All right. Well, I shouldn't say that. If it depends on which court you listen to. But they didn't have conferences, so he told my grandmother that P meant perfect, and that's all he brought home. They were poor. And my grandmother found out after 8th grade that he was getting poors all the time. I said, "What'd you do?" And he said, "Well, the way he put it, he said, my ass was red for about a week." All right. So they've got a phone pattern here on 569. This is just another way that it can be done. So once they set up the pattern, then they set up a test on it. So in other words, this is the pattern, and then you're testing that phone number. This is another way that you can do that. So it'll test that number here against that pattern there. It'll return true if it meets the standards that are in there, and false otherwise. All right. Would you do that for a phone? You may or may not. But again, you a lot of times do work with patterns like that when you're working with passwords and confirm passwords.
If we update information on validates email, how come we need to know the pattern and all that? Obviously,
Because for people who have older browsers. All right. And remember, you can browser sniff. And the only time you'd have to use that then would be if they were using IE6, IE7, and I'm not sure if 8 will handle that or not. All right, so that's really all you're looking for is just the older versions of IE normally. All right, there's another thing with some more class expressions down here on the bottom. All right, these are kind of neat, but they're a little bit hard to understand. The D we already mentioned. Notice it's case sensitive. If you use a D, you know, \D5. So if I say this, \D5, that means that's the same thing as saying, another way you can do that if you want to is you can say 0 through 9, 5. Does that make sense? You can use either one of those. All right? Most of the time you see it done like this. If you don't want to allow digits, then instead of this, you use this. And how would you do it here? You'd put that caret at the beginning. So there's a lot of ways that you can do these things. Notice S for white space, and the W, as it says, for alphanumeric. You all know what alphanumeric is? That's letters or numbers, nothing else. No blanks, no special characters. For alphanumeric, I don't think it will. No, it'll take 0 through 9 and it'll take A through Z. I think that's it.
It's not like you're really going to put like
Yeah.
something negative, or maybe
Yeah, it might, I don't believe so. And one thing that normally also is true is it'll be the same regardless of what language you're using. So your patterns and stuff will be the same in JavaScript or Java or C#. All right? Another thing that you're going to probably like about C# is that until we get to the I think it's the last chapter of the book. This is the book you're using next semester for the C# class. So until you get to I think it's the last chapter, I'm checking here. There's 14 chapters. No, it's chapter 13 of 14. Chapter 13 will be that one that you probably won't like. Why? Because it's on event handling, which is kind of what we're doing right now. All right? But until then, we're just going to be doing straight programming. All right, so there's another example on 571, 572, 573, and 574. On the bottom of 574, again, all right, if you use this meta character, the pipe sign, it's the same thing as when you use the double pipe sign in an expression. It means or. All right. You may or may not be aware of this, but when you search for patterns, by default, it only returns the first one. Did you hear what I said? So if I go and looking through a big list of something, and maybe there's 20 names that start with or that have WIL in them, by default, it will only give me the first one. If I put a G in there and the end, so in other words, when I showed you this before, and I just want to mention this to you, not on a test or anything, but if I put in this, and let's just say that we had what we had before for, so we'll just put in the only thing we want to put in here is a 5-digit zip code as an example. So I'm going to just put it in like that. All right? But if I've got a list of a bunch of zip codes, it'll only find the first one. If I put a G on the end, it'll find all of them. All right? That means global. Now, if I'm not working with this, if I'm working with names, so let's say that I want to find any name that has WIL in it anywhere. All right? So I could put in here WIL, something like that. All right? I might not be showing it to you correctly, but it's something similar to that. If I do this and I put an I on the end, that means find it if it's a big WI, if it's a little, if it's all caps, etc. So the I means ignore the case. And you can combine these. So if I wanted to find all of them, I can put IG or GI. It doesn't matter. All right. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use these different types of flags. All right. That ends the section on here. So jumping up to 577, now they change gears, so to speak, and they start talking about arrays for a bit. All right. Now, you may or may not have seen these things before, but with arrays, there's a push and there's a pop. Push, as it says, adds an element to the end of the array. Pop removes the first element from the array. All right. And there's not only is there push and pop, but there's shift, and on the next page, there's unshift. Okay? So push and pop, push adds to the end, pop removes from the end, push adds to the end, and shift and unshift add to the beginning. See what I'm saying? The difference between them? So you want to add something to the end of a list, or a bunch of values, or you want to add it to the beginning. Well, what if I just want to put in all of your names, and then when I get done, I want to sort it. Okay? So let's say I had a list of names, and when I get done, I want to sort that entire list. So if I've got a list of names, so if I come in here and I create this list of names, and I say var names equal, and I have in here, I'm making these up. Ken, Mary, Sue, Bob, Ellen. All right, there's no significance to any of these names. Then I come in here and I say array.sort, okay, and I put in here for the names. Whoops. Now it's going to put Alan, and then Bob, and then Ken, and then Mary, and then Sue. Does that make sense? All right. There is no reverse sort. Please listen to that because it's really important. Other languages provide that. Okay. So after I do this, this is now going to be Alan, followed by Bob, followed by Ken, followed by Mary, followed by Sue. Okay? But if I sort first, so if I sort that, and as soon as I sort it, on the next line I say array.reverse names, all right, then that reverses what I just did. So in other words, now I'm going to have Sue, then Mary, then Ken, then Bob, and then Alan. Does that make sense? All right. I believe that one of these might be asked on the test. We're going to look at it in just a minute anyway. But there is no reverse sort. Other languages provide a reverse sort. What was that? The question is, will it do it with numbers? The answer is yes and no. All right. And okay, I want to show you what it means. So if I come in here and I do this, let's say I've got a bunch of numbers: 111, 23, 45, 8, 91. All right. Would you agree that those are not sorted? Would you agree with that? Okay, you're wrong. Because according to JavaScript, they are sorted because they sort based on the character. And 1 comes before 2, 2 comes before 4, 4 comes before 8, etc. So, and I'm going to show you this, and this is something, you don't have to bookmark it, but you might want to look at this. I'm just going to type in here, sorting numbers in JavaScript. And when I do that, one of the first ones that's going to be put there is W3 schools, their array sort. And here they talk about it, but then they mention that if you want to do numbers, you have to write this. You literally, it's almost always written like that. You're writing a function to tell it to sort, but you're telling it to sort numerically based on the numbers. All right? And so that's going to turn it into this. I'm going to grab all this just so you see it. Again, this is right from W3 schools. I'm going to grab all of that in just a second. So if I do this, that's what it's going to be equal to. All right? Now, what if I wanted to do it in reverse order? All right, then I would just do this. I would just say B minus A. That's all you got to do. And then it's going to give it to me 100, comma, 40, comma, 25, comma, 10, comma, 5, comma, 1. Does that make sense? And it's just, what's that? No, that won't matter if you, the only way it'll mess it up is if you have more than one decimal, because it wouldn't be a number then and it would be confused. All right, but that will work. All right, and again, what does that do? It's just an internal thing that compares everything. It compares every number by every number. All right, that's all I can tell you. But they do explain it in here, but just not in a lot of depth. I'm sure you can look it up online and probably get a much better explanation than what I just gave you. So these are some of them. 578 has got some more of them. Notice again that slice we talked about before. Not only is there a slice, there's a splice. That's a little confusing. All right. And notice slice creates a portion of an array to another, copies a portion from one to another. Splice actually removes a chunk. All right. It's like you're doing an arrayendectomy. So if you got an array and you want to remove if I came through here and I decided in that names thing that we had before, maybe not here, not there either, that I wanted to remove some of these names, I could. Remember, always, that's name 0. So they go through some examples. They call it finding and extracting values here on 578. but you go through these, what they say in here is, okay, you've got some states in here, and you want to find the 5 largest states. All right, well, what are the 5 largest states? What the heck does that even mean? All right, well, probably there might be something here where you had populations or something else. I don't know what they're basing off of. All right, they go through examples of shift and unshift on 580 and 581. On 581 and 582, they go through slice and splice. Then jumping down to 582, on the bottom of the page here, then they bring it back into talking about this Goldenrock State Park. So you start on 582 on the bottom of the page. It says the plan for it is to add the value of each item selected in the preferred lodgings to an array. Well, since you're adding it to an array, you may decide that you want to put it in alphabetic order. All right? Anything that you're putting into an array, you might want to sort it. If I had all of your grades for the last test, maybe I'd want to sort them into, reverse or into descending order. So the top grade would be first type of an idea. So again, that's a pretty long exercise. 582, 583, 584, 585. Then on 586, they jump into talking about sorting on the bottom of the page. And I already showed you how to sort. And I showed you on the next page the reverse method. Okay, so they talk about all that. You can use that concat that we talked about before to add 2 arrays together. Can you use a plus sign to add 2 arrays together? I've never tried, so I don't know. All right.
Does the alphabetic one take the first character?
The alphabetic one, okay, let me show this to you, and you tell me if it makes sense to you or not, okay? So I'm going to put in 2 names here. And then I'll give you a fancy schmancy word. It does what's called a lexicographical comparison. So it says M and M, they're the same. A and A, they're the same. R and R, they're the same. Y and K, they're not the same. Y comes after K, so Mary is greater than Mark. You actually can use greater than and less than type of operators on here. All right, is that the question you were asking?
Yeah, just don't really have anything special.
Well, the only thing you might want to do is, what if I had this?
Or
See how they're not the same caseness? So I might want to make them both upper or lower case, because actually the M, lowercase m, comes after in the sequence, uppercase M. So lowercase Mark is actually greater than uppercase Mary. So you want to make sure you're always comparing apples with apples. And you're going to get screwed up if you compare names with numbers. The system will try, but it doesn't really know what you're trying to do. It may or may not give you the answer that you're expecting. I don't know why somebody would do that, but again, you can try to do anything you want to do. All right, on 588, near the bottom of the page, converting between data types, and just so you know this, okay? I'm going to come back to this thing that I showed you before with that there. All right, so this is that Hunlock thing, but I'm going to go back up to the top, and now I'm going to go to arrays. And there it is. So these are the different things in here that you can do with arrays. These are all the things we've talked about. All right, so if you want to see some more examples, you can go out to that URL. Sometimes, though, you've got an array. So you got a list of elements. And, man, I want to do something with it, and there's not an array method. But there's a string method that does what I want to do. So you could take an array and convert it to a string. You could take a string and convert it to an array. They don't call it in this language, but in other languages like PHP, they call that explode or implode. So if you explode, you're taking typically like a string and you're breaking it out into a bunch of array elements. If you implode, you're taking a bunch of stuff and making it one. All right, so you're doing the same thing, but it's just not called the same thing. So again, there's another exercise then on 591 and 592. And then the last thing that's discussed in the chapter here, I'm turning up here to page 592, right near the bottom of the page, is they start to talk about this JSON. Now the author literally gives it what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. That's why I don't think it's fair to test you on something like this. There's just not enough that's on it. If you're interested in finding out more about JSON, you can literally go out to json.org, json.org. Real ugly site, but they get you started on what JSON is all about. And notice they've got links to how it's used in every language, including JavaScript. So if I go out there and click the JSON link under JavaScript, it'll tell me how that's handled. All right? But the idea is, for years, I don't know if you remember this or not. Do you have to know this? No. There's a lot of times people, is it not a test? No. Anybody remember what that stood for? AJAX, it's an acronym. It stands for Asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. XML is a language that looks a lot like HTML, but in XML, you make your own tags. It can get very confusing looking very quickly. So over the years, you know, I always give it the mushrooms analogy that most people either love mushrooms or they hate them. Most people usually either love XML or they hate it. Those people who hate working with XML, all right, AJAX is really, today it doesn't stand for that anymore. Because probably half the places that use AJAX, they don't use XML anymore. Whoops. They use JSON. Because JSON, JavaScript Object Notation, looks more like JavaScript than XML does. The good news about using JSON, there's only 2 methods. These 2 right here that are shown in the middle of 593. There's parse, that converts a string to an object. You know what objects are now. And there's stringify, which converts an object to a string. So which direction are you going into? All right, so if you're going from a string to an object, it's parse. From an object to a string, it's stringify. All right, and they show you a couple of examples of this on 594, and then they have you actually do a little thing for the last part of the assignment on 595 and 596. All right, that's it. I'll tell you what, let's just do this now. So if you would please get out your test review for Chapter 8. I'll bring this up. The good news is this shouldn't take as long as most of them. Most of the answers here are short. Give you a minute or two, and in about 2 minutes I'll start up going over this. All right, so number 1, as it says, how do you assign a literal value to a variable? Number 1 is through the use of a text string. Okay? Number 2, I already told you this. It says what characters are used to begin and end regular expressions. Most people use a forward slash, but it's not mandatory that you use a forward slash. Still, again, most people do. Everybody have those first two? All right. Number 3, how do you convert a JSON string to a JavaScript object? That's parse, and I don't think it's on the test or it's not on right here, but I'm going to just do this. I'm going to say this. How do you convert a JavaScript object to a string? So that second one would be via the stringify method. I don't think that's on the test, but it might be later, I don't know. So again, it depends on what direction you're going in, that's all. And that's not string a guy, that's stringify. Okay. All right, number 4, the method that constructs a text string from Unicode, it's from char code. You should know what this means where it says this is a static method, which means that you don't have to create an object for it. It's like the math one that I showed you before. Number 5, you want to go to all lowercase, it's the 2 lowercase method. If you want to go to all uppercase, it's the 2 uppercase method. And these are case sensitive. So the L and the C in lowercase, the U and the C in uppercase must be capitalized, and everything else must be lowercase.
Parentheses supposed to be after the 2 uppercase?
Yes,
Or
they
is it
are.
supposed to be-
Yes, they are. Thank you. Okay, everybody see that? Make sure the parens come after, yeah. I think, I don't remember if that's a short answer. I don't remember what kind of one that is. I don't have the test with me. Number 6, the length property returns the number of characters that are in a string. The concat method allows you to combine 2 strings together. Remember, concat is another way of using the plus sign. If you have fallen behind on any of the assignments, you know, I'd say most people in here have caught up, but But if you haven't done the stuff for Chapter 6 yet, please turn it in as soon as you can. All right? Because unfortunately, there are people in this class that, there are people in this class who have over a 99% average on their assignments. I'm not talking about the test, but on the assignments. But there are other people in here who haven't turned in all of them, and their grade is suffering because of that. Number 7, it's that reg.exp, which is short for regular expression objects. And regular expressions consist of literal characters and meta characters. You know what those meta characters are. We looked at them. Things like, again, like the caret for beginning of the line, the $sign for end of the line, etc. Those are meta characters.
So the R in reg is supposed to be capitalized?
Yes. And again, the reason that that's kind of important is because virtually every language uses it just about the same way. There might be little nuances, but they're pretty much the same. If you're learning next semester C# and you want to do something with regular expressions, you're going to go back and use the same exact stuff you used here in the same way. All right. Number 8, what kind of characters are used for multiple characters? They're character classes. The meta character that's used is that pipe sign, and it's a single pipe sign. I don't think the author tries to screw you up, but you never use 2 pipe signs for an or like you do when you're programming. All right, for regular expressions, it's just a single pipe sign. Number 9, well, I don't know, I lost the question here. Let's see, what array method is used? What is the array length property? I don't see that in there. What array method is used to remove and return? Oh, brother. Okay, that should be read. The array length property tells the number of elements that are in the array. Let's put a space between each one of these. So that's the order in which they are. Everybody has that? Okay. Number 10, we saw this at the beginning of the chapter. Parsing is extracting characters or substrings from a larger string. It's grabbing something. It's that needle in a haystack mentality that I mentioned to you before. And that's substrings, not subtrings. There. That looks better. Save that. string class contains the methods for manipulating text strings. Patterns used for matching and manipulating strings are known as regular expressions. That's the actual answer. But again, they're also known as regex. But the actual answer is regular expressions. I'm just telling you that because sometimes you see it as regex. So, what? Also known as regex. Number 13, what is JSON? Again, some people call it JSON, some call it JSON, but it's JavaScript object notation. As it says, it represents a JavaScript object as a string. All right? That's the definition that's in the book. Remember, at the end of each chapter is a list of terms. So if you didn't get something, or if you find that confusing, you can look at the end of the chapter, which was 590 something. It's in the book on pages 598, 599, and 600. I've got all the definitions in the chapter. All right, the last thing are all the terms, so I'll just leave this up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to leave this up here for about 3 or 4 minutes. So these are the first 5. So I'm going to let you get those in between now and about 10:20, and then I'll move it up for the last 5. Remember, that is not an I for the second one. That's that pipe sign, because it is on the test as a pipe sign right here. So that's not a capital I or a lowercase l or a number 1 or anything. That's the pipe sign. I'm going to look. When I was at Blackhawk, I did a couple, for lack of better words, they were like worksheets. I had a worksheet with a bunch of string stuff, and I had a worksheet with a bunch of array stuff. If I can find those worksheets, I'm going to print them off for you and give them to you for tomorrow, or else I'll give you hard, electronic copies. Okay, and that's what we'll be going over.
What's the last word on the code?
What's that?
What's the last word?
World's languages. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but those of you who are not very fast typists want to go out to that Mavis Beacon program during the break and try to become a faster typist. All right. Give you about 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to move this up so that the last 5 show. Okay, does everybody have these first 5? You've got meta characters, pipe sign, parse, pop, and push, yes? All right. And those are the last 5. I'll leave those up there for about 5 minutes or so. All right, the rest of the period is yours. The last hour and a half is yours. Tomorrow we'll go over examples for about an hour, and the rest of the period will be yours. All right. Thursday, remember, Thursday is the written test, and then the rest of the period is lab. Friday will be the hands-on. And anyone who's here, and even Drew, I don't know, anybody this affects, you know, if you have, even if you've not turned in, let's say that you didn't turn in assignments for chapters 1 and 2 of the JavaScript, I can still give you up to 4 points if you turn it in. All right, 4 out of 10. So, I mean, it's not great, but, you know, you never know. That might be the reason, the difference between a B plus and an A minus or something like that. And I counted, there are 10, I believe, 10 of these, and there are 10, you know, it's not like there's 9 of one and 10 of the other. We don't have that here. So you will have almost 3 hours of lab tomorrow, and you will have 3.5 hours of lab on Thursday. So please, if what I want is I want everybody to get all caught up. So next week you can create fantastic looking portfolios. And about that last Thursday that we have class, so that'll be next Thursday. By that time, I'll have checked and see if I can recreate all of your accounts on IWT.rankin.edu, and we'll try to see if we can upload it as a class. And if there are any kind of problems, we'll have to see if we can work through them, but that'll give me a couple days to try to do that. Does anybody need any of these shown again that I went too fast? Any in numbers 1 through 14?
I'm just 11, 12 because I had some so I just wanted to.
All right, I'll come right back then if you're still copying these. So 11 was string class, and 12 was regular expressions, also known as regex.
Thank you.
Do you need any, Dominic, you need any more, you need to go back to any of them?
What was 3?
Number 3,
Yeah, parts.
first part was parse, and then if you did, I added this second part. So if you want to go from a string, JSON object to a string to an object, it's parse. But if you want to go in the other direction, I added that, it's stringify. This is what's on the test, I believe, is what's in gray. Whoops. Amin, you need any of them repeated, or did you get them all? Evan, you're okay? Okay. Brady, you're okay too then?
Yep.
Okay.
For some reason, my computer locked up and I didn't know why. So I didn't figure out why.
Do you have,
What's the book for next semester?
book for next semester is right here.
Should be if you get on there, Visual Civil.
Visual, it's called Visual C#. I'll tell you what, I'll copy down all the information, I'll email it to all of you during the break. Okay? We've got the books for next year too, so. Because in December, you have to come up with everything through the following year,
Right. Yeah.
so. And I'm gonna be using, the first one, using the book that you guys are gonna use in fall for ASP.NET, because it's a new version. It's a new version of Visual Studio, and it's a new version of ASP.NET. And the book is really, it's thick.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Yeah, it's about 800 some pages, I believe.
You can do a lot with it though. So
Yeah, you can. And there's no way we could cover all that anyway, because that's only half the period, or half the class. The other half is the database stuff.
Oh, really?
And that's, I don't know if you remember when I had you copy over a book,
Yeah.
and we're gonna be going through that book.
Oh, okay.
And we'll do some exercises and stuff as a class. Dominic, do you have all the ones at the end?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, do you need any other ones? No? Okay.